Welcome to 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 51st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sharrkan bade Princess Abrazah and her damsels doff their garb that was on them and don the garments of daughters of Greece. And thus they did. Then he dispatched a company of his companions to Baghdad to acquaint his father, Omar bin al-Nu-uman, with his arrival, and report that he was accompanied by Princess Abrazah, daughter of King Hardub, lord of Gracialand. They halted forthright in the place they had reached, and Sharrkan also halted and all-nighted there. And when Almighty Allah made morning dawn, Sharrkan and his company and Abrazah and her company took horse and fared on towards the city, when lo! On the way they met the Wazir Dandan, who had come out amongst 1,000 horse to honor Abrazah and Sharrkan by a special commandment of King Omar, son of al-Nu-uman. When the two drew near, they turned towards them and kissed ground before them. Then they mounted again and escorted them into the city and went up with them to the palace, Sharrkan walking in to his father, who rose and embraced him and questioned him of this case. So he told him all that Abrazah had told him, and what had passed between them, and said, She hath parted from her sire, and departed from her reign, and hath chosen to take part with us, and to make her abode with us. And indeed, he said to his father, the king of Constantinople hath plotted to do us a mischief, because of his daughter Sophia, for that the king of Greece had made known to him her story, and the cause of her being given to thee, and he, the Grecian king, not knowing her to be the daughter of King Aphrodon, lord of Constantinople, and had he known that, he would not have bestowed her upon thee, but would have restored her to her parent. And of verity, he continued, we were saved from these perils only by Lady Abrazah, and never saw we a more valiant than she. And he went on to tell his father all that had passed from first to last, of the wrestling and the single fighting. When King Omar heard the story of Sharrkan, Abrazah was exalted in his eyes, and he longed to see her and question her. Thereupon Sharrkan went out to her and said, The king calleth for thee. She replied, I hear and I obey. And he took her and brought her in to his father, who was seated on his throne, and who, having dismissed his high officers, was attended only by his eunuchs. The princess entered, and kissing the ground between his hands, saluted him in choice terms. He was amazed at her eloquent speech, and thanked her for her dealing with his son Sharrkan, and bade her to be seated. So she sat down, and unveiled her face. And when the king saw her beauty, his reason fled his head, and he made her draw near, and showed her favor, appointing her in a special palace for herself and her damsels, and assigning them solde and allowances. Then began he to ask her of the 3 jewels aforesaid, and she answered, Here be they with me, O king of the age. So saying, she rose, and going to her lodging, unpacked her baggage, and from it brought out a box, and from the box a casket of gold. She opened the casket, and taking out of those 3 jewels, kissed them, and gave them to the king. Then she went away, bearing his heart with her. After her going, the king sent for his son Sharrkan, and gave him 1 jewel of the 3. And when he inquired of the other 2, replied, O my son, I mean one to give to thy brother Zau al-Makan, and the other to thy sister Nuzhat al-Zaman. But when Sharrkan heard that he had a brother, for to that time he knew he only had a sister, he turned to his sire and said to him, O king, hast thou a son older than myself? He answered, Yes, and he is now 6 years old, adding that his name was Zau al-Makan, and that he and Nuzhat al-Zaman were twins born at a birth. This news was grievous to Sharrkan, but he kept his secret and said, The blessing of Allah Most High be upon them. And he cast the jewel from his hand, and shook the dust off his clothes. Quoth the king, How do I see thee change thy manner when hearing of this, considering that after me thou becomest the heir of the kingdom? Of a truth, the troops have sworn to thee, and the emirs and the grandees have taken the oath of succession to thee, and this one of the three jewels is thine." Sharrkan bowed his head to the ground and was ashamed to bandy words with his parent. So he accepted the jewel and went away, knowing not what to do for exceeding wrath, and stayed not walking till he had entered Abrazah's palace. As he approached, she stood up to meet him, and thanked him for what he had done, and prayed for blessings on him and his sire. Then she sat down, and seated him by her side. But when he had taken his place, she saw rage in his face, and questioned him, whereupon he told her that Allah had blessed his father with 2 children by Sophia, a boy and a girl, and that he had named the boy Zau al-Makan, and the girl Nuzhat al-Zaman, and he hath kept the other 2 jewels for them, and hath given me one of thine. So I left it behind. I knew not of Zau al-Makan's birth till this day, and the twain are now 6 years old. So when I learned this, wrath possessed me, and I tell thee the reason of my rage, and hide nothing from thee. But now I fear lest my father take thee to wife, for he loveth thee, and I saw in him signs of desire for thee. So what wilt thou say if he wish this?" Quoth she, "Know, O Sharrkan, that thy father hath no dominion over me, nor can he have me without my consent. And if he prevails over me by force, I will take my own life. As for the 3 jewels, it was not my intent that he should give any of them to either of his children, and I had no thought but that he would lay them up in his treasury with his things of price. But now I desire of thy favour that thou make me a present of the jewel which he gave thee, if thou have accepted it." "Hearkening and obedience," replied Sharrkan, and gave it to her. Then she said, "Fear nothing," and talked with him a while, and continued, "I fear lest my father hear that I am with you, and sit not patiently under my loss, but do his endeavours to find me, and to that end he may ally himself with King Afridun on account of his daughter Sophia, and both come on thee with armies, so there befall great turmoil." When Sharrkan heard these words, he said to her, "O my lady, if it please thee to sojourn with us, take no thought of them, though there gather together against us all that be in the land and on the sea." "'Tis well," rejoined she. "If ye entreat me fair, I will tarry with you, and if you deal evilly by me, I will depart from you." Then she bade her slave maidens bring food. So they set the tables, and Sharrkan ate a little and went away to his own house, disturbed and perturbed. Such was his case. But regarding the affairs of his father, Omar bin al-Nu-uman, after dismissing his son Sharrkan, he arose, and taking the other 2 jewels, betook himself to the lady Sophia, who stood up when she saw him, and remained standing till he was seated. Presently his 2 children, Za al-Makan and Nuzhat al-Zaman, came to him, and he kissed them, and hung a jewel around each one's neck, at which they rejoiced, and kissed his hands. Then they went their way to their mother, who joyed in their joy, and wished the king long life. So he asked her, "Why hast thou not informed me at this time that thou art the daughter of King Afridun, Lord of Constantinople, that I might have honoured thee still more, and enlarged thee in dignity, and raised thy rank?" "O king," answered Sophia, "and what could I desire greater or higher than this my standing with thee, overwhelmed as I am with thy favours and thy benefits? And furthermore, Allah hath blessed me with 2 children by thee, a son and a daughter." Her reply pleased the king, and after leaving her, he set apart for her and her children a wondrous fine palace. Moreover, he appointed for them eunuchs and attendants, and doctors of law, and doctors of philosophy, and astrology, and physicians and surgeons to do them service. And in every way he redoubled his favour, and treated them with the best of treatment. And presently he returned to the palace of his dominion, and to his court, where he distributed justice among the lieges. So far concerning him and Sophia and her children, but in the matter of Abrazah the king was greatly occupied with love of her, and burnt with desire of her night and day, and every night he would go into her, and converse with her, and pay his court to her, but she gave him no answer, only saying, "O king of the age, I have no desire for men at this present. When he saw her withdraw from him, his passion waxed hotter, and his longing and pining increased until, when weary of this, he summoned his wazir Dandan, and opening his very heart to him, told him of his love for Princess Abrazah, daughter of Hardub, and informed him how she refused to yield to his wishes, and how desire for her was doing him to die for that he could get no grace of her. The wazir, hearing these words, said to the king, "As soon as it is dark night, take thou a piece of bang, the measure of a muscal, about an ounce, and go into her and drink somewhat of wine with her. When the hour of ending the carousal shall draw near, fill her a glass cup, and dropping therein the bang, give it to her to drink, and she will be dropping it into a sleeping chamber ere the drug take effect of her. Then do thou go into her, and take thy will of her, and such is my advice." "Thy rede is aright," quoth the king, and seeking his treasury, he took thence a piece of concentrated bang. If any elephant smelled it, it would sleep for a year. This he put in his bosom pocket, and waited till some little of the night went by, when he betook himself to the palace of Princess Abrazah, who, seeing him, stood up to receive him. But he bade her to sit down. So he sat down, and she sat down and beside him, and he began to talk with her of wine and wassail, whereupon she furnished the carousing table and placed it before him. Then she set on the drinking vessel and lighted the candles, and ordered to bring dried fruits and sweetmeats and all that pertained to drinking. So they fell to tippling, and the king ceased not to pledge her till drunkenness crept into her head. And seeing this, he took out the bit of bang from his pocket, and holding it between his fingers, filled the cup with his own hand and drank it off. Then filling it a second, he said, "To thy companionship," and dropped the drug into her cup, she knowing naught of it. She took it and drank it off. Then she rose and went to her sleeping chamber. He waited for less than an hour, till he was assured that the dose had taken effect on her, and had robbed her of her senses, when he went into her and found her thrown on her back, and she had doffed her petticoat trousers, and the air raised the skirt of her shift, and discovered what was between her thighs. When the king saw the state of things, and found a lighted candle at her head, and another at her feet, shining upon what her thighs enshrined, he took leave of his 5 senses for lust, and Satan seduced him, and he could not master himself. But he dropped his trousers, and fell upon her, and abated her of her maidenhead. Then he rose off her, and went to one of her women, by name Marjana, and said, "Go into thy lady, and speak with her." So she went into her mistress, and found her lying on her back insensible, with the blood running down to the calves of her legs, whereupon she took a kerchief, and wiped away the blood, and lay by her that night. As soon as Almighty Allah brought the dawn, the handmaid Marjana washed her mistress' hands and feet, and brought rose water, and bathed her face and mouth with it, whereupon she sneezed and yawned, and cast up from her inside that bit of bang like a bolus. Then she revived, and washed her hands and mouth, and said, "Marjana, tell me what hath befallen me." So she told her what had passed, and how she had found her lying on her back with the blood running down, wherefore she knew that King Omar bin al-Nu-uman had laid with her, and had undone her, and taken his will of her. At this she grieved with exceeding grief, and retired into privacy, saying to her damsels, "Deny me to whoso would come into me, and say to him that I am ill, till I see what Allah will do with me." Presently the news of her sickness came to the king, so he sent her sherbets and sugar electries. Some months she has thus passed in solitude, during which time the king's flame cooled, and his desire for her was quenched, so that he abstained from her. Now she had conceived by him, and when the months of child breeding had gone by, her pregnancy appeared, and her belly swelled, and the world was straitened upon her. So she said to her handmaid Marjana, "Know that it is not the folk who have wronged me, but I who have sinned against my own self, and that I left my father and my mother and country. Indeed, I abhor life, for my spirit is broken, and neither courage nor strength is left in me. I used when I mounted my steed to have the mastery of him, but now I am unable to ride. If I be brought to bed among them, I shall be dishonored before my handwomen, and every one in the palace will know that he hath taken my head in the way of shame. And if I return to my father, with what face shall I meet with him, or with what face shall I have recourse to him? How well quoth the poet, say, what shall soulless one who hath not home nor stable stead, nor cup companion, nor cup, nor place to house his head? Marjana answered her, it is thine command, I will obey. And Abrazah said, I desire at once to leave this place secretly, so that none shall know of me, but thou, and return to my father and my mother. For when flesh stinketh, there is naught for it, but it is my own folk, and Allah shall do with me as he will. O princess, Marjana replied, what thou wouldest do is well. Then she made matters ready, and kept her secret, and waited for some days till the king went out to chase and hunt. And his son Sharrkan betook himself to certain of the fortresses to sojourn there a while. Then said she to Marjana, I wish to set out this night, but how shall I do against my destiny? For already I feel the pangs of labor and childbirth, and if I abide other 4 or 5 days, I shall be brought to bed here, and I shall be unable to travel to my country. But this is what was written on my forehead. Then she considered a while, and said to Marjana, look us at a man who will go with us, and serve us by the way, for I have no strength to bear arms. By Allah, O my lady, replied Marjana, I know none but a black slave called al-Ghazban, who is one of the slaves of King Omar bin al-Nu-uman. He is a valiant wight, and he keepeth guard at our palace gate. The king appointed him to attend us, and indeed we have overwhelmed him with our favors. So look, I will go out and speak with him of this matter, and promise him some moneys, and tell him that if he have mind to tarry with us, I will marry him to whom he will. He told me before today that he had been a highwayman, so if he consent to us, we shall join our wish and reach to our own land. She rejoined, call him that I may talk with him. Whereupon Marjana fared forth and said to the slave, O Ghazban, Allah prosper thee, so thou fall in with what my lady saith to thee. Then she took him by the hand and brought him to the princess, whose hands he kissed. But as she beheld him, her heart took fright at him. However, she said to herself, of a truth, need giveth the law. And she approached to speak with him, yet her heart started away from him. Presently she said, O Ghazban, say me, wilt thou help me against the perfidies of fortune, and conceal my secret if I discover it to thee? When the slave saw her, his heart was taken by storm, and he fell in love with her forthright, and could not reply. O my mistress, whatsoever thou biddest me do, I will not depart therefrom. Quoth she, I would have thee take me at this hour, and take this my handmaid and saddle as 2 camels and 2 of the king's horses, and set on each horse a saddlebag of goods, and somewhat of provant, and go with us to our own country, where if thou desire to abide with us, I will marry thee to her thou shalt choose of my handmaidens, or if thou prefer, return to thine own land. We will marry thee, and give thee whatsoever thou desirest, after thou hast taken of money what shall satisfy thee. When al-Ghazban heard this, he rejoiced with great joy, and replied, O my lady, I will serve both of you with mine eyes, and will go at once and saddle the horses. Then he went away gladsome, and saying to himself, I shall get my will of them, and if they will not yield to me, I will kill them both and take their riches. But he kept his intent to himself, and presently returned with 2 camels and 3 head of horses, one of which he rode. And Princess Abrazah made Marjan mount the 2nd, she mounting the 3rd, albeit she was in labor pains, and possessed not her soul for anguish. And the slave ceased not travelling with them night and day through the passes of mountains, till there remained but a single march between them and their country. When the travail pangs came upon Abrazah, and she could no longer resist, she said to al-Ghazban, set me down, for the pains of labor are upon me. And she cried, Marjana, do thou alight and sit by me, and deliver me. Then Marjana dismounted from her horse, and al-Ghazban did in like sort, And they made fast the bridles, and helped the princess to dismount, for she was a swoon from excess of anguish. When Alcibiade saw her on the ground, Satan entered into him, and he drew his falchion, and brandishing it in her face, said, O my lady, vouchsafe me thy favours. Hearing these words, she turned to him and said, It remaineth for me only that I yield me to negro slaves, after having refused kings and braves. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease the reading for this day until the morrow.